I'm going to be speaking about careers, because whatever course you decide to go on, whether you go on a degree course at Bradford or with Escape or anywhere else, or you go on any kind of course in media, you're going to have to start thinking about a career. And as Rob pointed out, we don't know what's going to happen in 3 years' time, but we have some basics of advice and rules for you, which hopefully you'll find useful. So the first thing, as we've said, these days there are lots and lots of careers information out there about VFX, animation and games, which wasn't the case, say, 5 or even 10 years ago. There's a lot of stuff there about getting a career in America, but not a lot about the UK. But now there's lots and lots of stuff you can find out there, which is trusted sources. I'm going to be taking you through and introducing you to some of the sort of best places to find out more. So it won't be me telling you about careers. It'll be where the honeypots of information are when you're on any media course, get really interested in animation, games, or VFX. These are the kind of sources that you can find. But to sort of cut to sort of one thing that Rob actually said, which was about the creative industries. He was talking about AR and VR and the new additions to the creative industries. But the UK is actually really, really good at creativity. So 111 billion pounds, 2 million people working in it. We have one of the top games industries in the world, likewise VFX. And we have huge numbers of support roles there as well. So there's loads and loads of careers in this area. And we put this slide up really for parents, because sometimes parents don't know. They kind of think this is a kind of dodgy fly-by-night, games industry. But actually, you can have really solid careers now in games, VFX, and animation. And hopefully, we'll be persuading you about that. So the government as well is actually supporting those industries and sees them as main areas of growth. So it's our global advantage. In 2018, there was a special sector deal which involved various bits of funding for the industry. And you may not know this, but people like ILM, Industrial Light and Magic, who make Star Wars, in 2014, they came over to the UK, to London, to set up because of tax breaks and because of opportunities over here with the amazing talent we have. And if you think about our industry, it's everything from Peppa Pig, Wallace and Gromit, Grand Theft Auto, not a lot of people know that, J.K. Rowling, Harry Potter, Alexander McQueen, Ed Sheeran. They're all great things to do with our VFX industries. But let's talk about VFX animation and games. Because if you're on a course, you're going to have to think about your future, and the skills you get on a degree course can really help you gravitate towards those. Now, the first thing is, you may not know much about VFX animation and games, so how do you start? Well, I would say, first of all, do a bit of research. We actually have on the Escape Studios website a careers quiz, which you can go on and take, and that'll help you sort of decide whether, your strengths and your potential lie in those particular fields. Don't worry about making a note of the URL. I'm sure John will pass on the URLs and the links later on, so consider them yours by the end of the day. Okay, so you can try a career, try careers quiz, find your passion. We also have on the Escape website an industry beginner's guide, because we know it can be very confusing for students. Each industry, as I'm sure you know, has its own jargon and way of doing things, and they can seem kind of very bewildering. So we've written a beginner's guide to help people, find out more about how to get started, because that's the most difficult thing, I think, getting started in VFX animation or games. How does all that stuff fit together? How does the stuff you see at the cinema, a lot of it made in the UK, by the way, or the games you play on your console, how do they get made? Well, you can be part of those industries. I'm going to talk now about a particular role, a particular career, which is a great way to start. So whatever media course you might do, you may want to try becoming what's called a runner. And a runner essentially is a person, it's a great new entrant job. It's throughout the industry, particularly VFX and animation, but sometimes in games as well, where you join the organization, you become kind of a sort of service support to artists, to animators and technicians. Some part of it is serving coffee to people and tea, making them feel welcome, but other parts of it are important, like maintaining equipment. You become really, really useful to the organization by the fact you are flexible and able to do everything from duplicating files to meeting and greeting people at reception, to photocopying, to meetings of amazing artists, making sure that they're okay. And you need lots of skills for that, which will set you apart from others and help you in your way. So it's a great sort of entry-level start. You need to be computer literate, of course, and you need to have ambition and to use problem solving. Okay. So I'm also going to introduce you now to another great place to look for details about being a runner or getting into the industry, and that's Access VFX. And Access VFX is an organization, it's now multinational, and it's set up by at least 40 of the biggest VFX companies in the world who want to ensure that they get new talent from everywhere, not just degree courses, not just master's courses or PhD, but apprenticeships and internships and all kinds of places. So it's really worth you looking at accessvfx.org. And if you do look at that site, you'll know that you'll see that they have a day in the life of runner. So you can find out what it's really like to be a runner from Framestore. They're the people who did Gravity, they've done Paddington, so many amazing feature film effects. You should really have a look at that, because only if you hear from the people who are actually doing the job will you really understand about it. But look at look at that, look at Access VFX, and decide if a runner is a position that you might be interested in. All organizations that have runners have it in their interest to promote you once you've found your way around, because you know what they're like, you know what they need, and therefore you're promotable. So getting in as a runner is a really good idea. Okay, so VFX, we kind of know, don't we, that the UK is one of the world leaders. We've won VFX Oscars for Gravity, Interstellar, The Golden Compass, Inception, Ex Machina, and even The Jungle Book. So we're really good at what we do. But also, VFX isn't just lightsabers and sort of explosions and robots. It's everywhere. So VFX as an industry is everywhere. The films that maybe your parents would watch or your guardian would watch on Netflix, for instance, the period dramas and stuff, crammed full of VFX. So VFX, if you're interested in VFX, you don't have to be a science nerd, a science fiction nerd. You can just be interested in images. And the great thing about VFX is, I think, fooling people, because you're fooling people into believing something is there when it doesn't exist. Okay, another great source to find out about VFX is this, and it looks really complicated. Screen Skills, who are an organization who look after what's called the screen industries, and again, try and get talent in and help the industries grow. They've got these amazing things called careers maps. And at first they look really confusing, but actually they're really good roadmaps for you to decide how you might travel from job to job, or how you might get into a particular industry. And they've got them not just for VFX, but for other industries as well. So Screen Skills, if you remember nothing else, look up Screen Skills and see the stuff, because they've got some amazing information for you about all kinds of industry careers. Another great place to look, if you want to find out about VFX, is the VFX Festival that we run. And it's annual, but this year we're running it throughout the year, running events throughout the year. I think you might have got the URL truncated slightly there. It's a com. So it's thevfxfestival.com. But that's great because you can find out more about who's making VFX and learn that way. And also they'll tell you about how they got into the industry. There's nothing better, is there, than finding out from other people, role models, about how they got into the industry. Okay, I'm swiftly going to move to games now, because the games industry in the UK is also huge. As you can see from this figure, £5.7 billion of market value. And games, of course, are everywhere now, not just on consoles, but on phones. They're everywhere. And the thing about games as well, which might be interesting to some people, is games companies are everywhere. They don't have to be in London or the big cities, because unlike VFX, which needs to be close to TV and film industry, games can be anywhere. So if you're not particularly interested in coming down to London, for instance, to work, then maybe look into games. And again, this is from a website which I'll drop into, I'll tell John about later on. But some of the VFX, some of the game stuff, Grand Theft Auto, Forza Horizon, Monument Valley, they're all been made in the UK. Although you might not know it. And there's 2,261 games companies in the UK at the last count. So there's loads of them as well. Okay. Some of the jobs in games, and I'm going to talk particularly about games art, because games have kind of two sides, the technical side and the games art side. So one of the particular jobs which might be of interest if you're a bit technical and a bit creative is technical artists. And they're the people who sort of use art and code together to make games. And so it's a very high pressure job, but there's great ways into the industry that way. And there's actually an apprenticeship in this as well. So you don't have to necessarily go to university to know more about it. But the kind of things you need for this is you need to know a games engine like Unity or Unreal. You need to know 3D like Maya or 3ds Max. You need an artistic eye and maybe a bit of Python programming if you've got it, and a bit of a knowledge of game pipelines, which you can get by doing stuff in your own free time. You don't necessarily need to go on a course for that. So that's one thing to look out for as a way in. Another way, of course, is 3D modeling, which is where you build stuff in 3D. So you make models and place them within a game for someone else to use and program. So you've got to be sort of really hot on stuff like rendering. You've got to be hot on a program like Substance Designer or Substance Painter and Photoshop. Experience with the games engine, but you've also got to be really good at communication, and you've got to be good at time management, because all these things are about deadlines. Okay, I'm going to just rush on a bit. Again, you can find out all this information from Screen Skills website. Again, that place where the careers maps are. Okay, so Last of Us as 2, as you know, topped the charts. And again, that's a lot of that was made by Sony in the UK. So that's an example of how good we are in the UK. Right, now, what's this about? Well, this is today's animation. Animation, which we kind of think of as young kids stuff. Actually, today, it's stuff like this, or it might be stuff like Paddington on the right, made by Blue Zoo, and of course that's a kids' TV, and then Paddington on the left, very different kind of approach, but still an animation. And animation is incredibly popular across VFX games, and of course on its own rights for kids' TV, etc. One of the skills that you really need to know for animation is rigging. So if you're not particularly good at animation, maybe rigging is the kind of thing you might want to look at. And for that, you kind of need to understand bones and anatomy, because what you're essentially doing, you're taking somebody else's model and you're building a skeleton with joints to go inside it, to move it. So you're not particularly the animator yourself, but you're enabling someone else to be an animator. So that's kind of cool, really, taking somebody's model and then building a sort of jointed skeleton to go inside it. No one knows it's there, but you are the person who makes sure that the model moves correctly, it's animated correctly. It's a great skill, and it's really in demand as well. Okay, if you're interested in animation, and again, it's another tip, the summerofanimation.com is on right now. You can join for free. It's essentially a time to learn all about animation for free with a program called Blender. It's on right now. It's for 15 to 18-year-olds, but if you're unlucky enough to be too old or too young, you can still go on YouTube and look at all the master classes they're doing at the moment for different roles in the industry. So, a fantastic opportunity. Okay, I'm coming to the end now, and this is kind of where the cutting edge is, I guess, these days. All those skills we talked about, animation, VFX, and games, all find themselves a home in VR. So by becoming good at one of those skills, you're actually future-proofing yourself for the future world. Your skills won't be out of date by the end of the course. And these are the skills that you should all think about as well, because it's not about the technology. Rob and I have been showing you some amazing stuff, but it's not about the tech, actually. The tech is relatively easy. It's how creative you are and how much innovation you use to make new things happen. Also, it's not about where you go to university. Now, you wouldn't expect me to say that, but I have. The main thing is the show reel. That's your passport to your future. So if you're looking for a university, decide when you're looking round, is this the place where I can get the best kind of show reel? Because that's your passport in the future. All these other skills are, of course, important. Teamwork is really important, working in teams. All the stuff I've shown you can't be done by one person anymore. It's all done by teams. And on that note, I think I'm running out of time, so I'm gonna just flip to my last slide and say, whatever you choose to do, good luck in your journey on your future career.